In case you might have been wondering, why don't they make music like they did in the 80s? Well, your questions are answered with this album. This album is a wonderful, fantastic album. It's an ode to the 80s, to the style of 80s music. If you like 80s music, if you like 80s synth music, you're definitely going to love this album. I know I did. This is an album I fell in love with the very first moment I listened to it. I first listened to it on YouTube, and then immediately I went in and bought the album. So I could not think of a better album to start out with this new channel and with my first ever album review than Atlas by FM-84. Now, FM-84, they tend to focus on retro new wave. They do a lot of new retro wave stuff, music. So there's a mix of instrumentals and songs with vocals in this album. So they like to call themselves a sun-soaked 80s inspired cinematic synth pop band from California. Maybe a band isn't necessarily the best way to describe them. They're a mix of different things, and they do have other vocalists who come and go. There's actually more than one vocalist who is featured on this album. Now, the album right now, you can get it on their website, on Bandcamp. You can get it for $7. The entire album for $7 to download it. And I definitely would recommend you do that because this album is magic. It's pure magic. So the tracks, you start. Track one is an instrumental called Everything. It's everything I could ever hope for when it comes to a synthwave instrumental. It's definitely one of my favorite instrumentals from this album. I love the melody. I love how things are situated. It's a really nice instrumental. I have to be honest though, when it comes to this album, I definitely do prefer the songs with the vocals versus the instrumental tracks. I'm not saying the instrumental tracks are bad or anything. They're actually quite excellent. It's just I just prefer music with vocals. That's just my personal preference. So, but I do like Everything. I think it's a good track. Now, Running in the Night is track 2, and it's one of the standout tracks. I love this track. I kind of bounce back and forth between this one and Wild Ones when it comes to what are my favorite tracks from this album. The vocals here by Ollie Ride are great. I hope I said his last name correctly. If I didn't, I apologize. I know not of what I speak. But I love this guy's vocals. It definitely does harken back to the type of vocalization that you heard in like the 80s and things like that. It's kind of there's maybe a little bit of new wave in here or AOR and I really like that type of vocalization. The vocals are powerful and strong and great. And one of the main things I really like about this track and Wild Ones is how the vocals interplay and work really well and match with the instrumentals. There's certain stuff near the end, in particular, that I really love, and it's a moment where you have the background vocals mix with the foreground vocals and the instrumentals and create a very just cathartic and just really amazing experience, a really amazing musical experience, which is one of a kind because it just like takes you away into another place and into a magical place, into a wonderful place. And yeah, I love this song. Now, Tears is the track 3. It's probably that might be my favorite instrumental. It's really solid. It's instrumentals are kind of hard to review because there isn't really a lot to say except is it a good instrumental? Is it a good beat? Are there good instruments and stuff like that and good dynamics going on? And there are. It's a definitely a commendable track. It's just kind of hard for me to really review an instrumental track. But yeah, the track 4 is Chasing Yesterday. It's another instrumental, and it might be one of my least favorites. I'm not saying it's bad or anything. It just kind of sounds a bit too similar to Tears in some aspects for me personally. But it's still nothing on this album is like, oh man, it's bad. I can't listen to it. It's just not one that I would probably pick out and listen to as much as some of the other tracks on the album. Now, track 5 is Let's Talk featuring Time Cop 1983 and Josh Daly. And I like this track. This is another one that I do enjoy a lot. I like the dynamic. I like the vocals. An instrumental is good. So yeah, that's a good one. Track 6 is Arcade Summer, which is another instrumental. It's another instrumental that I really do enjoy. I like the different instruments that are used and the different instrumentation that's used in this track. It definitely does bring up memories of going to the arcade when I was a kid. I remember going to the arcade in Portland called Wonderland with my parents. And yeah, they still had an arcade, when I was growing up in the 90s. And I just had a lot of fun memories of going to the arcade with my dad. So that did bring back a lot of nostalgic memories associated with going to the arcade. Now, you have track 7, which is, I would probably say, my favorite track of the entire album. Wild Ones featuring Ollie Ride once again with the vocals. And this is a song that's straight out of the 80s. It's catchy, it's got a great beat to it, it's got instrumentation, it's on point, the vocals are fantastic. It is an absolute masterpiece of a song, if you ask me. I love this track. I really do. Then you have track 8, which is Don't Want to Change Your Mind, also featuring Ollie Ride. I like that one too. It's not one of my favorites, but I could definitely listen to it. I mean, all of these tracks, like I said, there's not a single one that's bad. I mean, even the interlude, which is titled Atlas, which is like 54 seconds, and it's the track that comes after track 8, Don't Want to Change Your Mind. I can still listen to that. I mean, and then I usually don't care for interludes. I mean, that's how impressive this album is. The interlude is good. Then we have track 10, which is Jupiter. This is a more sci-fi feeling kind of, sounds like it might be like a sci-fi movie, and of course, that's the point, because it's called Jupiter. So, it definitely does take you to outer space, and it's a nice instrumental track. It's a pleasing track. Pretty satisfying. The whole album is satisfying as a whole. So this track isn't anything, it isn't like the exception or anything like that. The whole album is satisfying. Then you have track 11, which is Goodbye, which is, it's like the album itself is saying goodbye to you, and I'm like, I don't want you to leave. And it's like, don't say goodbye, And it features vocals by Clive Farrington. And the vocals here are pretty good, pretty solid as well. Now, there's nothing really bad about the vocals here. And that's really nice to see, because in a lot of these new retro wave tracks, and I love this genre to death, but there's a lot of them where they have they have vocals in them, and yeah, some of the vocals are just subpar or not that good. And here, that's not the case. The production value with the whole album, including the vocals and the instrumentals, is off the charts. So everything about this album is rad. It's epic. It's amazing. I love this album. I don't know what else to say about this album, except if this sounds like something that's right up your alley, check out the album. A link down below. You can listen to it on YouTube, the entire album. And if you enjoy and if you like what you hear, please support the band, support FM-84, and buy the album. It's only $7. And that's not that much money and it's definitely worth it for the just pure awesomeness that you will get for that $7. Anyway, Yeah, I'm completely new to this album review thing, so I guess I could try to review. I guess I'll review albums the same way I do movies, and I would give this album 5 out of 5 stars, highest marks. The I don't really have. I only have like a few nitpicks to certain songs, but I still like them. I prefer the songs with the vocals over the songs with the instrumentals, but I still like the instrumental tracks, and just some of them kind of bleed together a little bit. But that's how it is with any instrumental for me. They just kind of bleed together after a while, and that's not a knock against instrumentals. It's just if you have a good instrumental and you have good vocals to go with it, then it becomes something that's one of a kind. Then it becomes something that a song that really is very memorable. Instrumentals, you can have a great instrumental, but they don't really tend to stick with me as much as a great song with a great instrumental, with a great hook, and great vocals. And this movie and this song, I mean this album, I keep saying movie because I'm so used to doing movie reviews. Forgive me, but this album, it has some really great tracks in it with instrumentals as well as vocals, and I could not recommend it enough. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys later. See ya.